And we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome in.
I don't know if I believe you.
Uh, we're on the screen.
Are we?
We are.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 101st episode of Morning Ritual. I'm one of your hosts, Noir. I go by he, they. And this is the other host who is more awake than me.
Moderately. Mostly because I've had more time to adjust. Hi, I'm your other host, Anita. My pronouns are she, they. And we got an amazing guest today. Why don't you tell us a little bit
Ah!
about yourself?
Hi, I'm Craig Campbell. I'm the owner of NerdBurger Games. My pronouns are he, him. I've done I've GM'd and played for 30 plus years. I've done a bunch of freelancing. I now design my own games and publish them through NerdBurger Games. And occasionally I employ freelancers who are on this show with me right now. Uh,
Okay, okay. When I was talking about you earlier, because we've got a house guest, and he was asking who our guest was. I'm like, it's Craig. Craig's really cool. He does game design. He does work for a company called NerdBurger Games, and occasionally he pays my bills.
Happy to do it.
Well, here's a fun story about you, Craig, that I never got a chance to tell you, so I get to tell you now.
All
Um,
right.
this this is going to be about my third time interviewing you. I
That sounds
interviewed
right.
you twice on a show called Table Ticks that I do for Gen Con. The first time I interviewed you for Table Takes, I was on as a guest host, and I was the guest host with the most interviewing experience. And because of that interview, I am now full time on. I'm full time on Table Takes. So thank you. You also pay my bills.
Excellent.
What we saying is Craig will get you work, folks. So
I do try. I try to make sure that like a small percentage, tiny percentage of the RPG community is dependent upon me, or I'm able to help in some way.
you
Absolutely.
you you do what politicians only promise to do, which is to provide jobs. So,
That's right. Craig
but no.
Campbell bringing jobs to the RPG industry since 2016.
So if you're wondering where the $20 that we all share amongst ourselves in the space comes from,
Craig is funding that.
but no, I'm super excited to have you. The first time I interviewed you, we were talking about Capers. I believe Capers had just gone out for fulfillment, which is if you have not had the chance to play Capers, I highly recommend it. It's a really super duper fun game, and they also have a setting in Chicago. So I just think you had me there. But look, I kind of want to just delve into this with some game design questions because I've started developing a game myself, and I'm at that point now where there's just a little bit more work to do before you get into playtesting. And my question to you is like, how do you know when it's ready for playtesting? Because I'm still like, no, we can tweak it a little bit more. Like we can play a full game as it is now, but
Well, there's I want to say I've got 3 stages of playtesting, and I might amend that as I talk, but I think I've got 3. And one is sometimes there's a play test when I literally just have bullet points of the rules. Like I have it in my head, the very basics, put together a couple of basic characters, figure out what kind of challenges there might be, a little story, or just run some combats or whatever, and just get together with some friends. And I don't need to, I can just teach them what I need to teach them at the table. And we're just going to make sure it feels right. Like it feels like there's
yeah,
legs. It may not be perfect. It may have a lot of problems, but it feels like there's something there. And that's then you can go to the next step, which is defining all of that information a little more, getting the rules kind of codified, at least your first set of rules, putting together enough information for character generation that you can either give pre-generated characters that have a wide range of abilities to the players, or they can make characters so that they have enough variation so that you're testing out a lot of different things, you're testing out different types
yeah,
of abilities and so forth. And you've got enough of the, at the very least, the core system of the game in place. with maybe some of the more necessary subsets. Like you might, if you're playing running a fantasy game, you might not have all the nuances of different types of weapons and armor and all the crunchy stuff that goes with that. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to see how, like, I want to see attacks and hits and see whether people are doing that and how that's coming out. And I want to see spells cast and, see skill checks and things. So maybe some of that other stuff gets rounded out more. And you can also play test that, like, give that to people and run it yourself. And then there's the jump to, can I give a document to someone else who has never seen the rules before and I'm not there and they can read it and understand it and play the game? So it's as much a rules comprehension and understanding of what you're presenting as it is testing the rules themselves. So where are you at, Noir? Are you planning to give something to somebody and walk away, or are you still kind of doing things yourself?
I think I'm at that bullet point phase.
Okay.
So what we're developing isn't like a system where you go and play adventures. It's more of like a Cards Against Humanity type game, but to show folks that they can GM. So it's all based on the story map, initial incident, rising action, climax, lowering action, and resolution. And there are prompts that we give for each one. And essentially what it is you'll get a prompt and you will then create a pitch for a campaign. Like your prompt, your initial conflict prompt could be something like, someone uncovered a ancient artifact that somebody uncovered a lost ancient artifact. That's your prompt. What's your pitch on that? So it's like you discover a ancient artifact. The ancient artifact is tied to a spell that will bring about the apocalypse. That would be my pitch. And then everybody votes on who had the best pitch, and that is the pitch that becomes canon. Then we move on to rising action, and we do the same thing. So at the end of the game, there's a whole plot point. There's a whole plot for a campaign, and folks can choose to play that or not after the game is done. It's essentially, creating a game by committee.
Sure. Playtest that now. That sounds ready to go.
Yeah,
if you know what the prompts and steps are, and you're not dealing with mechanics and probabilities and that sort of thing, it's more of a prompt improvisational thing that you're kind of building.
Yeah,
give it a shot. Take the playtesters, tell them, hey, this is the first stab. This is alpha. If you know your game development, this is alpha. Might need a lot of tweaking. We might change things in the middle of playtesting. Somebody might suggest something. Hey, why don't we do this, or why don't we add this step? We might do that in the middle of the playtest.
I like that.
And just be prepared to do that sort of thing. Yeah, in the early play tests of something I'm tinkering. I'm not really working on it yet. I'm kind of tinkering with it. We literally just solved problems in the moment of the play test. Be like, oh, this is not clearly defined. This doesn't really jive with the mechanic. Like, what can we do to make this thing work within the core mechanic that we've got? And we just kind of tossed ideas around there and came up with something, and then that became part of the next playtest. Playtest it now.
So sorry, I had to put the battery back in my headphones. They were acting weird. So if there's something you said in the last 5 seconds, I'm so sorry I missed it.
No, that's okay. I summarize as playtest that baby now.
Yeah, you might be getting the email like, hey, so... my next question was, how did you decide to jump into this? Because I just had an idea, and I was just like, I don't think this idea exists, and it might be fun. And so I was on a plane, so I started writing, and by the time we landed, I had pretty much the bones of this. Is that the same kind of thing that hit you, where it's just like, this should exist and nobody else is going to do it, or was it something else that called to you?
As far as designing the first game and actually, with the intention of publishing it myself, that sort of,
yeah.
Where did that start? In 2009, I started doing more freelancing. I had done like a little bit before that. I started doing some freelancing, mostly for Wizards of the Coast, for D&D, but a few other things as well. And then that kind of floated along like that for several years. And then there came the slowdown in 4th edition, where they, if you recall, in that last year or two, they stopped producing crunchy books. They started doing stuff that was mostly setting oriented and flavor, because that is where they were internally playtesting 5e, and shifting the design focus to that. They could hire people to write, we're going to write more about the Feywild or whatever. But then they, their game design efforts went into 5e. And so my freelancing started to dry up because of that. And I thought, well, I can wait until the freelancing starts up again when 5th edition comes. I could reach out to other games and other publishers, and find games that I also like and know well enough that I feel I could contribute to. Or I could try to design my own game and just like see what happens with that. I've got time to kill. So it's wait, work for someone else, or work for myself. And I did a little bit of freelancing for some other folks in there, but I decided I'm going to try to design a game of my own. And then I spent 3 years doing that.
So my follow-up question is, when you made that decision, did you have any earthly idea how you were going to publish this?
Well, at that point, Kickstarter had become a thing. Yeah. So I thought I knew that at a certain point, I knew that like, okay, a Kickstarter is like something that I can viably do. When I first started designing the game, I thought it would be like a 10-page mini game. And then it was like, oh, it'll be a 20-page mini game. And then I was like, oh, it's going to be like a 30 or 40-page game. And I'll put a few bucks into it and get some basic graphic design, and I'll put it on drive-through-RPG. And then there came a point where I said, no, this is going to be a book. This is going to be like a real thing. It's going to be 100+ pages. And that's where I started. And then I spent, like a year. I was researching Kickstarters for a year before I launched one, while design was wrapping up. So, I kind of moved toward that. So it was one of those things where I picked up all the various skills, the ones that I needed at that point, just to get me to the point of being able to run a Kickstarter and publish it through drive-through, where I just kind of picked them up as I needed to start learning them. Okay.
It's the Kickstarter aspect of like, if I do this, that frightens me greatly. Just, because I have worked on some Kickstarters as my day job for other companies, and it's always been a clusterfuck. I'm not gonna lie. And the hard times comes when it's fulfillment time, and that's the nightmare. So how have your Kickstarter experiences been? What have been some of the obstacles in your way as you do your Kickstarter?
I spent, a year researching them, so that helped. And that was before there was like this big kind of database of information. Like now you can go and find websites where people have blogged about all their experiences with Kickstarters, and you can search and find all the different things. Like there wasn't as much of that at that time. And Kickstarter continues to surprise me. Like every project that I kickstart, and there have been quite a few, like it's chaos. Like you just don't know. Like you could have something that suddenly does really, really well. You could have something that just kind of limps along, or something that fails. People ask anybody who's run a few Kickstarters, and they'll tell you like there's certain safeguards you can take. There's certain steps you can take to try to ensure as much as possible, but there's a part of it that's just chaos. Like you might put a Kickstarter up on the day Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro starts a crowdfunding campaign for a redo of a beloved childhood board game. Like I did when Hero Quest came out on the same day I launched Good Strong Hands. And suddenly everybody who was looking at disposable income for games that they're effectively pre-ordering, suddenly saw a $50, $60 or whatever dollar price tag it was for that. And like, well, that's a couple less role-playing games that I'm going to grab.
Yeah. That's
But then you have another one where it gets picked up by Geek and Sundry back when they were still doing Kickstarter reviews. And so that one suddenly gets like 100 backers in 2 days.
There you go.
Because it shows up on Geek and Sundry.
Speaking of, you've currently got an expansion for Good Strong Hands on your Kickstarter right now. What is Light Without Dark? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. How familiar are you all with Good Strong Hands? Should we talk just briefly?
I would love a rundown for the audience.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm familiar.
Good Strong Hands is a fantasy role-playing game where you are portraying fantastical creatures who live in this fantastical world. And there's this terrible, faceless, malevolent entity called the Void that shows up every century or two to try to destroy the world. And heroes must rise up to meet that. And so you're playing, characters that are called upon to become those heroes to save your world from this thing called the Void. It's heavily inspired by the 80s movies, 80s fantasy movies that I grew up with. In particular, The Never-Ending Story, yeah. Hence which is where the name of the game comes from.
The Nothing.
The Void is just the nothing reskinned. But then also, Legend and Willow and Labyrinth and Dark Crystal. And there's some things that are like straight up like homages where like that's clearly, Sir Didymus. Like this character type is modeled after Sir Didymus from Labyrinth. But then there's some, a lot of things are just kind of general homage for that type of fantasy movie fare that we had in the 80s. And then that game got nominated for a couple of Annies last year, which surprised the bejesus out of me. And it was it sold a bunch at Gen Con, and I got really excited. So I was like, well, I really wanted to make a supplement in the first place, or at least one, and I just, after the Kickstarter did okay, it funded, but it wasn't like a breakout hit or anything. I was kind of like, I'm not sure I want to do that, but I decided to pull the trigger and create a supplement called What is Light Without Dark, which outlines and brings to the game the lost and broken realms that have been torn away from the world of reverie that's presented in Good Strong Hands. So as the Void has tried to destroy the world over and over, it has sometimes won battles. It has destroyed kingdoms or torn things out from the world and cast them into this nothing, the ether, and sometimes with it sent whole groups of cultures and people, as well as old magics that have kind of been lost to the world. And so What is Light Without Dark presents some of those realms and those folk that you can play, and old magics and artifacts and things, and some GM tips and tools and all sorts of fun stuff. It's a broad supplement that kind of expands on all parts of the game.
Oh, I dig it. I to my everlasting shame, I've never seen The Never-Ending Story.
All right. We're adding it to the list.
You gotta add it to the list.
Let's have group watch tonight. We've
got somebody in chat that's saying GSA is better than what was it, Hero Quest? So you won one person over for sure. So I guess we review GSH to talk about your current Kickstarter.
Which is What Was Light Without Dark, which Craig.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's that.
Okay.
It's just started this past week. It is funded, so the book's getting made. We're at
that's awesome. Already.
As we talk right now, 106 backers should get well into the 200s. Yeah, it's doing well. So right now there's a stretch goal to get form fillable PDF character sheets for all the different types of folk that are presented in the game. There aren't going to be any stretch goals to add content to the book. The idea here is we're going to turn this over quickly. Like it's ready to go. And it's been proofed and I'm happy with it. And it'll get people, get the the core game if you're getting that as well, and it'll get the supplement into people's hands pretty quickly, and it'll be ready for convention season and everything.
So this is a very obtuse question, but I'm very curious. What do you define as success for one of these projects that you've worked on?
Oh boy, success can be defined so many ways, right?
I know, right?
And sometimes you have an idea for what you would consider success, and then you modify that afterwards, sometimes because you discover something that is a better gauge of success for what you were doing, and sometimes because you just want to feel better. Maybe it didn't do quite as well as you hoped, but like for me, for example, Good Strong Hands, I really did hope that it would get big, that it would do very, very well on Kickstarter, and it did well enough to fund and afford me a print run. Like an offset print run, which is what I was shooting for. So I was kind of like, that's a decent success, but I wouldn't call it an overwhelming success. But then it got nominated for an Emmy, and I was like, oh, well, that makes it a whole different kind of success. And even though I didn't win either of them, I mean, it was just, you find different reasons to celebrate things. There are, what I normally define as a success for a Kickstarter is, do I stay in the black? Do I produce what I want to produce, whether that's just getting it done and recouping costs that I've spent, and get it into DriveThruRPG and do print on demand and PDFs, or also potentially cover doing like an offset print run that's going to cost more? Can I cover that? Do I stay in the black via the Kickstarter, or maybe with a little bit of my own money, the company's money thrown in to kind of round things out enough with enough money that I feel comfortable I can spend this to make sure this print run happens. I don't feel like I'm taxing myself, and I'm not going to be struggling to pay freelancers in the future and that sort of thing. So that's usually where the success falls for all of these. And it varies. Like there's little zine games that do 100 and some backers in 2 weeks, and I'm like, okay, well, I paid for it. That's cool. It's something I can put up for sale. It'll buy some stuff down the road. It's a genre that I haven't done before, so it's like it brings variety to Nerdburger games. And then there'll be something that I did, like this solo game called Secrets of the Vibrant Isle, which is like an 80-page solo game where it plays a little bit like Choose Your Own Adventure. There's a lot of like you choose to go do this or you choose to go do that, and you roll some you have a character and you make some rolls, and it gives you some results, and you're kind of just developing this like adventure that your character goes on this uncharted island. And that one did surprisingly well in Kickstarter. Like it got big. It was like
the art for that one was beautiful.
Yeah.
The art is spectacular. That's a great story how the art came into that game too. The artist is Ashen Wave on Twitter. Her name is Gemma, and she creates these really beautiful pieces of art that are kind of there's a realism to them, but they're not hyper, not hyper realistic, but they're very vibrant. They have like all these really vibrant colors, like deep tones. There's a lot of jewel tones. And she puts a lot of imagination into them. There's all sorts of interesting stuff that's depicted in the art. And I came across her on Twitter, and I just started following for the art. And after I was following her for several months, I messaged her and I said, do you ever take commissions, or would you be willing to license any of your art for use in a role-playing game? I don't have a specific idea for you right now, but if I come up with a game that I think your art is right for, would you be willing to do that? And she said she would be perfectly happy to license her art for a game. And so I said, great. And then a year passed. And then I was toying around with doing this solo game, and I bounced around a few different ideas and eventually fell on this idea of your character shipwrecks on an island, and there's all sorts of weird stuff going on. And it started initially as like Lost, like the TV show. And then there was going to be like, creepy and nefarious things going on. And then I came and I was just like scrolling Twitter one day and I was like, no, let's make it like amazing and fantastical and all these really wonderful and interesting things that you find on this island. And I'll use Ashen Wave's art. And I contacted her and said, hey, I've got an idea for a game. Are you still willing to license your art? And she said, yes. And I designed the game and put her art in it.
Oh, I dig it. I dig it. My next question is, well, first off, I want to throw you a compliment. You're really good at picking names for your stuff. Like every name you picked is just like, oh, that's gangster. But my next question is, one of the things that I've noted about you is that you have a con presence, and I was wondering like how useful has that been to the growth of what you're doing here?
Oh boy, as an indie guy and basically a one person shop with hiring freelancers, it varies. There are conventions that I can go to where I go to like a small local convention and it's a lot of sitting at the dealer hall because it's just not as big of a place. There's not as many attendees, so it's longer between people stopping at your booth and it can be a lot of sitting, but you're local. And you're kind of getting in touch with the local, like you're making sure that they know that, hey, there's this publisher, this game designer who's right here. And then at the bigger conventions, it's balancing how much it costs to go to the convention to whether you make decent money off of the booth. And I'm at the point with that where I generally am able to cover my costs. Even if I have like, hotel rooms or an Airbnb and team members that are coming along, and I'm paying, some or all of their way, as far as room and badge and so forth, then I'm able to kind of cover all that stuff. So like the conventions for me right now are, sometimes I have a convention where I just like, oh, I just actually made some decent money. And then sometimes it's, like I covered everything. I got a lot of great, oh God, I hate the word exposure. But it is
die of exposure.
Yes. Well, and I'm not a freelancer, I'm a publisher. And at a certain stage, there's like, you go to, if you get to the point where you can afford to go to Gen Con and not lose money, even if you're just kind of making a little money or more or less breaking even, it's kind of worth it because it's Gen Con, because 30,000, 40,000 people are going to walk past your stuff. Even if they don't buy it, they're going to see the company name or they're going to see a banner or they're going to see the cover for a particular game. And they might be like, come across it later and like, oh yeah, I saw that at Gen Con. I didn't get a chance to take a look. I'll take a look now. So you're kind of paying for marketing too, and that's a cost that's a benefit that is really hard to quantify. Because it's not like people tell you why they bought your thing. Oh, it's because I saw it at Gen Con. Well, then I better keep going to Gen Con because all these people see it at Gen Con and then buy it later. So convention attendance has run the gamut from like, okay, I covered myself and I got the game in a bunch of people's hands. Maybe they'll buy supplements, they'll look for other games, they'll back Kickstarters, and I just have to trust that some of that will happen. All the way to like, hey, this was actually profitable. And I'm in a position where like I have a day job. I do this on the side. I can only do so much of it. So I pick and choose where I go. So it just becomes like if I was trying to make a living at this, I would be taking a completely different tactic, different route at a lot of what I'm doing. I have the luxury of doing it this way because I'm not making it my living.
Yeah, I love hearing that, especially because it's just like, I think a lot of times people just see on Twitter game designers and publishers doing things and not realizing that there's a whole other life that, a lot of us live to pursue this. So I'm very glad to hear that. My next question for you is oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, before we get too far, Good Strong Hands, Mental Emmy in chat wanted to let you know that Good Strong Hands is lovely and has such good mental health themes. And that's why that they used it for a one-shot for the Take This Anniversary stream. And occasionally they recommend it to clients during therapy. They're a therapist. And so they wanted you to know that Good Strong Hands made an impact.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
I'm going to cry a little bit.
Also,
Thank you.
what's
That
up,
is
Omnis?
that is very sweet. Yeah, I knew that was happening. I'm happy that that they brought that up. That's um
That's really awesome.
I took a particular, like, every game has been like its own personal challenge. There's like certain things about the game design that I was like, I want to try to do this. I'm never satisfied to just like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things for Good Strong Hands that I wanted to do was, or a few of the things was, wanted a game where you could literally generate, the players could generate a character in 5 minutes, the GM could prep an adventure in 5 minutes, and you could, and this would also mean that you could run it online without a lot of extra supplements and all this sort of stuff. So it doesn't require maps or minis. It's all, there's a fair bit of dice rolling in it, but not as much as you would for a very robust game. So it's kind of middle, it's not rules heavy, it's not rules light, it's rules middle. And it's designed, it's designed, and everything is described in such a way that you can get into physical confrontation, but there is nothing inherently superior about rolling an attack to overcome that physical confrontation, that quote unquote combat. You can just as easily trick them or try to charm them, or kind of manipulate them socially, emotionally, or whatever. You can, and everybody can be doing all different things. Everybody can be doing their thing, and then whoever finishes the combat, whoever finishes the challenge, that's what actually, like, did they run away? Did they cower in fear? Did they switch sides? Did they get killed or knocked unconscious? Like, it depends on who gets the last shot in. That resolves it. So you can literally play a character that never swings a fist, and be equally effective to a character that runs around with a sword.
I love that. Like, not a lot of games appreciate nonviolent solutions, so that's always something that I'm excited to hear. Because I love talking my way out of shit. I love talking my way into shit too. So the question I was gearing up to ask is, what has been the most surprising receptions to one of your projects? Like, in terms of like folks working on it, in terms of how the audience received it. Like, it has something kind of hit you out of left field where you're like, oh, didn't see that coming.
Well, I mean, there's been a few. I already mentioned the Annie nominations for Good Strong Hands, including Best Rules. Like, I get why it was nominated for Best Family Product, because first of all, that's a category that doesn't have a lot of contenders, because there's so many games that just don't qualify, right, as a family product. But getting nominated for Best Rules was a moment of vindication. It was like, okay, this is like, I keep designing my own rule sets. Like, this is confirmation that I actually have something to contribute from that direction. And then there's been other little things too, like Capers did surprisingly well in the Kickstarter. I wasn't expecting that. And then I did supplements, and those actually did okay. So, and it's had a long tail. What they say in sales, they call it, the tail. Sales after the initial, Kickstarter and initial sales, like a few years later, it still sells pretty well. It sells very well at conventions. People really like it. I've had a number of people who praise the playing card system up and down.
Yeah,
because Capers uses playing cards rather than dice.
It's so thematic.
There's been, let's see, like the success of Secrets of the Vibrant Isle, just for like a first shot at doing a solo game and having it do like 800 or whatever backers. That's probably
there's been a
that might be as close as, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I feel like there's been a recent sort of uptick in solo RPGs. There's a lot of people that are getting more into that sort of experience. And I think Secrets of the Vibrant Isle hit it at like just that right sort of sweet spot where people are like, oh, hey, solo games. So I know I just picked up 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, and I'm very excited to dig into that. But and just everything about Secrets of the Violent Nile. The art, the themes of it, it's just beautiful. Chef's kiss.
Well,
Anyways,
a pandemic is going to do that, right?
Yeah.
A bunch of people suddenly not playing in person, looking for their gaming Jones.
Yeah.
And you can do stuff online, but yeah, like the solo thing. There's definitely been an uptick of that in the past few years, and I think there's plenty of it going on still now, but I think there really was a high point about like in the 1 to 2 year ago range.
Yeah, I think something about being able to explore portions of yourself sort of fed into the idea that like, oh hey, like I can just journal, I can just write into this, I can just do a choose your own adventure sort of path game, and I could still have that good deep role playing experience, but I could learn more about myself in the process. That's excellent. Excellent use of your time.
Yeah, and it like the things that you do in solo games are things like Ken Hite, the game designer, I believe, is the person who said game designers just sell your imagination back to you.
Yeah.
And, you know, like all the things that you do in a solo game, it's something that you could just come up with and do. Like you could just imagine up a story that delves into this thing. Like it could just imagination and narrating an interesting story for a character.
You could just write a book about
it. Could be delving into like aspects of yourself and thinking about yourself as, you know, as a whole person and different parts of you. You could do all of that stuff. It's just, you know, the solo games is like, okay, here's a framework.
Yeah.
For doing it in a bunch of different ways. It
facilitates your imagination in a way that writing a book about it doesn't necessarily. It's a prompt, essentially.
It gets you thinking about things that you might not necessarily think about.
Yeah.
It's the exact same reason I hire freelancers to write part of my settings. Because there are things about my setting. It's like, I've got the setting idea, blah, I'm going to barf it all out at you, right? And then a freelancer comes in and says, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And I think, no, and I never would have. So that's one of the reasons when like I tend, not always, but I tend to have a fair bit of freelancing. A lot of my freelancing for design work has been in the realm of the setting.
Yeah.
I think that's another challenge that I would love to kind of get more insight on, which is when you're handing this thing that you've worked on, that you've imagined to a writer, one, like what goes into that? Like how do you make sure you're giving them enough information without overloading them? and two, like, you know, have you ever received something back where you're just like, this is not the vision that I had, and how do you handle that?
Oh boy. No. I mean, it makes it sound like I'm about to tell you horror stories, and I'm not. But giving enough information that the freelancer has what they need in order to generate their work, without giving them so much that you feel like you're hamstringing them and making too many decisions for them. That's a fine line. Yeah. And it took me, you know, a few different going through that process with freelancers a few times before I think I found kind of like the middle ground of like, okay, this is enough information. And then, you know, it tends to be like what exactly you want them to focus on. If you give them the right focus, here's the broad strokes of the world that I've created. And I give them, you know, like I describe some of it, or we have a Zoom call and I kind of go through it a little bit, but then I give them the manuscript too. So if they want to dig deeper, they can dig deeper. They can do it to the level that they want to. But then give them the right, you know, the focus of what it is you're looking for from them, and say, you know, here's, you know, 3, 4, or 5 bullet points of what I'm looking for you to cover, and give them a template if there's like the way you want it formatted and kind of how to present the information, and an example if you can. I do that a lot of times too. Yeah. Like I wrote the entire Atlantic City section of Capers, and then I gave that to the freelancers who did New York and Chicago. and said, this is what you're shooting toward as far as like how much content in each section. Not hard word counts, but like, look at these pages. This is about what you should look like. Okay. With Code Warriors, I know enough about a computer and the workings of a computer to be, to be able to write a bit about the idea of, well, characters are living inside of a computer like Tron, and that's what the game is partially about. But then I employed a freelancer who works in computers, like they're an IT person, to flesh out the setting. And they came up with ideas for things, and we brainstormed a list of different locations to deal with, and they came up with a few of them. And then when I gave them the list, they went in directions. This is freelancer named Chris. Chris went in directions that I would have never thought to go with certain things, even if I had the knowledge. Like one of my favorite parts of the setting in Code Warriors, and this is all Chris, was we needed a recycle bin, right? There's the place that you send all the programs that don't need to be there anymore, the trash, right? The junkyard. And so that's what I gave him. It's like there needs to be a bin. And he designed this big floating bin, this big floating thing that roams around the system and has big tubes on it, and it sucks up the stuff that's not needed anymore. And when the apocalypse happens in Code Warriors, because that's what it's about, these programs are in the computer, and the apocalypse is starting because the system is crashing. Yeah. The bin goes haywire, and it just starts sucking up whatever it happens to come across. And then as the apocalypse progresses through different stages, he's described it in there as what happens to the bin. Like eventually it crashes to the ground, and it just becomes this really dangerous location. And then eventually those big tubes become arms, and it starts crawling around going after things.
That's nightmare
because its primary function is to get rid of the waste, and they're in the apocalypse, and it sees everything as waste.
Oh,
so it goes from being a ship to being a building to being a monster.
And
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that as someone that actually worked on that book, did the graphic design for it, getting those briefs and getting like the actual sort of like, here is the game, like read it over and like look at all these things and see what you can gather for inspiration is so helpful to me to get like a good feel for what I need to aim for my designs. And I ended up making the inside pages look like a tablet because I was like, all right, let's make this look like an old iMac from like the mid-90s that's crashing. And it's I imagined my old clamshell MacBook happening to it as it languished in a closet somewhere.
And the graphics are full of folder icons and close, expand and contract icons in the page layouts and in the page separators and in the character sheets, and everything looks like kind of like it's on a computer screen. But it looks like this. It's interesting because graphically and like color palette, I'd made a decision early on that it's essentially a post-apocalyptic world. And what does post-apocalyptic normally look like? It normally looks like dingy and dirty and broken, and everything's, falling apart, and it's dusty and rusted and all that sort of thing. And it's like, but a computer world should, like a Tron world should be like vibrant colors and really interesting things. And it wouldn't rust because there's no water, it won't get dirty in the same way. So the world, when it breaks down, starts to lose resolution.
Pixelates.
And so it starts to artifact and show it starts to show the wireframes underneath things and all that sort of thing. So what you end up with was then Anita took that, and like all the graphic design that presents everything is still this like really pretty, like this looks like a really like you said, a neat little like 15-year-old Mac.
Yeah, that was the idea.
With bright colors and all this stuff,
bright
but then
colors,
within it,
lines.
Yeah, and within it, there's like this computer world that's showing. And
occasionally there's
things,
like a glitch
things are
on the
derezzing.
page. Yeah.
Yep. And we added glitches to the pages, and there's pop-ups that come up and note different code errors that are taking place underneath it. So like the book itself is breaking down.
And my favorite thing to do with that book was to add like little Easter eggs. So some eagle-eyed readers of the book noticed that I had a DOS prompt on the intro and the end page. And it looked like the old Windows startup screen when the DOS prompt would come up, and it actually had like file folders, and I tried to like relate certain things to the pages that they were on in the book. Um, and there is NBG for Nerdburger Games is like one of the file names, and I think I also put the date that I started and the date that I finished hidden in the text as well, so that way I can almost side my work.
See, I love this kind of stuff where it's just a joint effort of creativity. That's really freaking cool.
Oh, can I throw my favorite Easter egg that Anita created into the mixer?
Absolutely.
We made dice for the game as well, and Anita hit on this font that looks like it's kind of glitching, and like the form of the letters are shifting. And that's what the Code Warriors logo is, but it's also the numbers on the die, and they use D8 dice for the game, and in the same blue as the cover of the book is, and Anita put binary code for the numbers on the faces. So when you're on every face has the number, and then it has 4 dots, and the dots are either open or filled. There's like little O's or little filled in circles, right?
Right.
And if you read from top to bottom, when you're looking at the number, open is 0, filled in is 1, and whatever it says in those 4 digits is the binary of that number.
That's sick.
Yeah. So I made sure I hid binary in the dice, so that way you could read it in binary or you could read it as
cool way to learn binary too.
Yes, I rolled a 0010. You can literally read that off the dice and know that that's a 2.
That's a 2.
So we have a couple of questions that we ask everybody, and I think we're just about at that time. So let's get into it. This is one that is always dangerous to ask, but here we go. There is a war in the TTRPG community between those of us who see die as just tools to help us tell stories and nothing further. And then there are others of us who see dice as the forbidden candy meant to pop in your mouth and crunch. I am on the side of stop the crunch. These are dental hazards and choking hazards, and you should not put them in your mouth. But there are people that love the forbidden crunch. And then, of course, there are the cowards that decide to stay neutral in this fight. I'm looking at you, Anita. I'm looking at you, Brenda Lee Mulligan. I'll never forgive you. So my question to you is, what side of this war are you on? Do you crunch or die, or are dice not for crunching?
Okay, I need to ask you, are you literally asking me if I put dice in my mouth, or is there a metaphor that I am missing?
I am literally asking. People actually do this, yes.
For some folks, it's a STEM thing.
Okay, sure. Okay, I gotcha.
Well, there are rubber dice and silicone dice you can use for your stimming. That's not an excuse.
Candy dice.
There's candy. Well,
gummy dice.
The crunchers say it's not crunching if it's edible. It's crunching. They want to crunch with the O.
I have never put a die in my mouth that I recall. But I'm not going to judge someone if that's a thing they want to do.
No, judge them!
I would prefer that you don't put my dice in your mouth and then hand them back to me. If you have dedicated mouth dice, that's fine.
Dedicated mouth dice.
See, they always say, well, I wash my dice. No, you don't. Nobody does that. That's weird.
Show me the video or it didn't happen.
Here's how I know it doesn't happen. We sell accessories for everything in this hobby. We've got hero pins, we've got dice jails, we got dice vaults, dice towers. I've never once seen a dice washer.
A dice cleaning station.
Like a golf ball washer where you got the thing on a stand and you just dump your dice in there and you go ka-chung, ka-chung, ka-chung. Yeah, maybe that needs a Kickstarter.
I know, right? I was thinking, like, you know what? If these crotches must exist, then I'm gonna give them the means to be less filthy. No, so it sounded very much like you're on Stop the Crunch or Crunch Responsibly.
Crunch responsibly. I don't.
Boo!
But I don't crunch.
You don't partake of the forbidden candy yourself.
Well, never say never, right? You know, they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but that doesn't mean so. See, now I'm sitting here with a die, and I'm like,
no, don't you do it! Cut the cameras. No, I've accidentally turned to crunch. All right.
I know where those dice have been, and now I'm not putting them in my mouth.
That's all we're asking out of.
I have washed dice. Like there have been times where I've just like, these dice get handled all the time. They are probably covered with germs and stuff. It's like, yeah, I've washed my dice.
It's like, have we learned nothing?
Yeah, the whole pandemic about this.
We have to refer to 2019 as the before times because
what's the CDC recommendation on washing your dice? How often? Probably a rule somewhere, right?
Oh God, we need to come out with branded dice washers. That's the move. That's the play.
NerdBurger Games brand dice washers. Oh, and the NerdBurger theme, the NerdBurger logo is that little burger, that little abstracted burger guy. Like it could literally be like a little plastic thing with a mouth that opens up, and you put it in there, and then you spin the little thing on the top.
See,
or you move it like a puppet, and it looks like it eats the dice.
Yep.
Oh, a mimic dice cleaner,
and it's just a sponge with water inside.
Yeah, it just squishes.
See, now
we're water all over your table.
We're coming up with something. We've got the NerdBurger thing and dice washer. We can have mimic dice washers. You put a dice in a mimic, close it up, it washes your dice. Or we can have gelatinous cube dice washers.
Oh, can we have like the dice washer version of the Kitsch metal donkey that poops out cigarettes? Have you seen those?
No,
it looks like a donkey with a pack on its back, and you pop the top off and you put cigarettes in there, and then you close it, and if you lift the tail up,
it comes out the
cigarette
rear.
pops out the rear end of the donkey. Can we have that but for dice? So when you lift the tail of the donkey up, it poops out a clean die.
Donkey cigarette dispenser. I remember those. I think I had an aunt that had one of those.
Everybody had an aunt that had one of those.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
If you are like, I would say 35 or older, and you had enough relatives that smoked, one of them had something like that they bought when they were on vacation at a roadside stand or at like some little tourist trap.
Noir, if you want to
some
see
sort
what
of
it looks
weird
like,
cigarette dispenser
I just
thing.
Dropped a link in your Discord if you want to see what it looks like.
Let's see this. Oh, I want one of these.
Doesn't everybody?
See, if this don't get you to stop smoking, I don't know what will.
Now you can still buy. Can you? I assume. Can you still buy candy cigarettes?
They are called candy sticks now, and they don't have the red tip on them anymore.
You can put that on there with food coloring.
Yep, that's what I was thinking.
You could do that with. You could just use that little donkey thing and get like candy sticks or whatever. Some other candy, whatever it is, as long as it's like approximately the right size and length of a cigarette that it'll poop out of the back of the donkey.
Oh God, I love it.
Or one of those like they had on Mad Men, which is like the round. It looks like a little pot. It's like a little round pot with like a little, looks like a lid, but it's not. It's got like this little raised bit in the center. You press it down, and it spirals the top open, and it's like splays all the cigarettes out like in a fan.
Oh.
And then you click it again, and it closes up and puts the cigarettes back inside.
I just had a memory, a buried memory.
I've seen those
unlocked.
in real life.
There's the one I was like looking at novelty cigarette dispensers because now I'm in a Google hole, and I found the one with the barrel, the man in the barrel. I had a repressed memory of an uncle that had one. It's a man in the barrel, and when you lift up the barrel, the cigarette comes out where the legs between the legs.
Okay.
Yeah. I buried that one deep.
So our next question. This is the punishment question if folks don't pick Stop the Crotch, which is you get to play with any 5 people that are alive right now, any system you want, and you get to choose who's the GM. You do not count towards the 5. Who you
Good Lord.
What's your table looking like? Yeah, that's why this is the punishment question.
Okay. Do people say the 2 of you just to butter you up or anything? Is that a thing? Is that expected? Like, where am I at on this?
It's not expected. it never happens. But thank you for thinking that. Now I'm offended
because I've never played. I've got 5 spots, right? Plus myself. So 2 of them go to the 2 of you because I've never played a game with either one of you.
Heck yeah.
And I know you both to differing levels. We've spoken quite a bit. Well, I mean, and I don't necessarily. I've only interviewed with Noir twice, but I've seen you on all sorts of other things. Like I feel like I kind of know you.
Yeah.
And Anita and I have worked together a bunch on top of online stuff. So yeah, there you go. The 2 of you.
You know the better half of this union.
Let's see.
It's you.
I would like to get Grant Howitt at the table.
Oh, he's good.
One of the designers for Rowan, Rook, and Deckard. Just because he seems like he's a damn hoot of a person to hang around.
Yeah, I think he wrote Crash Pandas too, right?
Crash Pandas.
A billion. Yeah, he's written all the tons of one-page. Yeah, he does a one-page. He has a Patreon for a one-page RPG every month.
Yeah.
Wow. He seems like and I love Heart, the game. And I think from what I've seen from his online presence, he seems like he would be just like a hoot of a person. To game with, and then I'm going to try to spread this, not just pick other game designers. I had a close encounter with Matthew Lillard at Gen Con last year, and I would like to sit down at the table and have Matthew Lillard there and have him GM. Because I think having an actor who has done voice work GM would be really entertaining and fun. And I'm going to say my brother Kurt, because to my knowledge, he has never played a role-playing game in his life, but he knows all the stuff I do inside and out. He has supported multiple Kickstarters, especially in the early days when like every backer counted and he was just trying to get the thing made. And he hears my, travails and trials via text messages, and when we see each other and everything, he's always kind of up to speed on what's going on with all my game stuff. And I would love to actually like just sit at a table and play the game with him, play a game with him. And I don't care what game it would be.
That's a good table. I want to play at that table.
Yeah.
And Kurt is super funny. He's very funny and incredibly well read and knowledgeable about a lot of things. He will knock your socks off with stuff he pulls out of his brain.
My favorite people to play with are improvisers and people who read a lot. Like, because they always come at you with ideas that you're like, I did not intend for this.
Oh, boy. Now I have another person I want to add to the table.
That's why this is the punishment question.
Yeah. Okay, my friend Jim is the alternate if one of you can't make it to the game. I know him from performing at the Bristol Renaissance Fair. He is an excellent improviser.
Yes.
He is super knowledgeable on history. So if we played a game that like lent itself toward historical anything, he would make it like, and he's good at teaching it too. That's the thing that gets me with Jim is he was my first, like I never had him as a teacher, but he was the first history teacher that I ever had that like actually made history interesting for me. I loved learning about stuff from him and still do.
Oh, hell yeah.
We love
Yeah, so he's the alternate. Sorry, Jim, if you ever hear this, you're the alternate because I thought it'd be late.
I just shout out to Bristol. That's the Renaissance Fair that's closest to us. We're going open a week this year. I'm spending too much money, and I can't wait. The follow-up question that we have after this is, congratulations, you are the God Emperor of the TTRPG space for one day. Any 3 things you want to have happen, no matter how big, no small, you snap your fingers, and it is law. It becomes the truth of our space. So, what 3 things do you do? We've had people like, I want this company to, as big as Wizards is, they exchange budget and size. Like we've had people like, we demand accessibility readers on everything. Like it just whatever you want, snap your finger and it happens.
All right, now my brain is trying to go as broad as possible. Like how much can I stuff into 3 choices? But people can listen to other people. Go back to other episodes and listen to other people's comments. What I would like is, can it be magical? Can what I'm asking for be magical?
Absolutely. You are the God Emperor.
I would like people who are gigantic douchebags.
Yes.
To have a Sims light over their head, indicating what type of douchebag they are.
Okay.
And we can have it color coded across a few different things, and they can earn that away by stop being a douchebag. So not just kick out the troublemakers and the abusive people and the jackasses, but like
give them a scarlet letter. I love it.
I don't want to sit at a table with any of those lights. But if they can get rid of that light, come on in and play. We usually get the Thanos wish, which is you snap your fingers and they vanish. I like this better. I like this much better. I like this because one, I like to imagine like whatever your crime is, you have a different letter. So if you're racist, it'll be like red. If you're a misogynist or a transphobe, you get your own different color, so you know exactly like, oh, I'm not fucking with this person, and here's why. Like, I love that. Oh, that's so much better. Yeah, color code your jackasses.
Yes.
I think it also lends to an air of restitution and restorative justice, where you can actually have the chance to be better and do better.
People do.
Yeah.
And they should be able to benefit from that. That doesn't mean that somebody who's been wronged needs to forgive them.
Absolutely.
That doesn't mean that they need to deal with that person again. But people change. People can improve.
The light is great because they had a bad take, but they're working on it.
I like this also because like I can see somebody getting ready to make a decision and one of the decisions is horrible, so like as soon as they start thinking about it, it starts to just flicker above their head like no.
I don't know if I like that, Mark, because I can't really control where my brain goes, and I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin, and so sometimes something pops into my head from my upbringing that is like and like the sexism light might flicker over my head. I'm not trying to, like it. But it might just flicker and go away.
It doesn't stay unless you act on it. That's what I love, because we all have shitty thoughts every now and then. I mean, most of us drive, so it's just, I don't know about you, but when I drive, the worst version of me is behind the wheel. Oh no, I love that answer. That's a really good answer. So that was our first one. I can't wait to see what the second 2 are.
Boy, I should have saved that.
You set the bar too high for you.
Well, that's the one that popped into my mind first. Okay, well let's try kind of in different realms, different categories. So
okay,
how about everybody who plays role-playing games? I'm not saying that you have to, but I'm saying you want to. Like, you magically want to try a game other than the one that you've been playing all the time lately.
Yes.
And it can't be just like that game reskinned a little differently.
No jumping from 5e to Pathfinder, y'all. We gotta try some. Get outside the box.
Well, no jumping from one broad supers game to another broad supers game. Like jump from a supers game. You want to say a supers game, that's fine, but like jump from a broad kind of general, Silver Age supers game into Masks, where you're actually teens and you're dealing with teen stuff, but happen to have superpowers and stuff. Like you can go into kind of side, attached subgenres that have other things going on, and just everybody wants to do that. Every now and then.
That brings to mind something that, especially when you were talking about the Supers game, I really love the idea of using different using different systems to tell different moments in the same story. Like, I would love, if you're playing a Supers game, if you have a flashback to when your hero was younger, why not use Mask? I feel like I feel like if we are more versed in different systems, that opens us up to different means of storytelling, which could be very exciting.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Or if you're doing a political intrigue plot, use Good Society.
There is an episode of Batman the Animated Series that reminds me so much of Capers, and I really this is something that I wanted to do. I had a show called Second City Saviors, which was using masks to tell the superhero story, but I would love to do a one shot with the villains where they're all playing a game of poker, talking about how they almost beat the heroes using capers. That was because the theme of it fits so well. It was that has been a dream of mine. I think I even kind of talked to you about it when we first interviewed. Just everything about capers is just so thematic. It would naturally tell that story. And when I tell y'all capers is thematic, look at this. This is one of my favorite things. This is the opening page of Capers. It's a newspaper, and that was one of the things that immediately wowed me. And here's the back of it too. It's just really cool. Love this book. But yeah, I just say all that to agree with you. I like that wish too. And now we have our number 3.
Number 3. So now both of those were very well received, so I don't feel bad going completely self-serving. Although this would benefit the community, this would benefit the RPG community in general, but it's very self-serving. I want a large 20,000 plus attendee 3 to 4 day game convention, not other convention that has games, but game convention in the south of the United States. I live in Atlanta. And while there are some small game conventions around in Atlanta and Chattanooga and so forth, and Dragon Con is gigantic and has a role-playing game chunk of it. But it's a fandom convention, and it's got kind of everything. It's the convention. It's a huge convention that tries to be everything, and it mostly succeeds. But it's I would love to have just something in the South that I could get to easily. Ideally right in the city where I could just live at home. I wouldn't have to get a hotel, and have a big convention and be able to be okay, this is my Gen Con. And this is the Gen Con that's easy to go to. And it would give the South, it would give the Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky. Well, Kentucky's close enough to Indy, but Alabama, Mississippi, you just shorter, easier to get to a big convention for some folks who could drive to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that I've been secretly trying to get Gen Con to move to Chicago. So I'm all about that self-serving con love.
Well, I get it. I lived in Milwaukee for many, many years when Gen Con was still there, and that was incredibly convenient.
Oh, doesn't it feel good when the cons are close? You don't have to worry about getting
get on the bus, go downtown. I know my way around. I know where all the restaurants are.
and all your friends come to where you are to hang out, right?
I can sleep in my own bed. friends from out of town can come in. I can take them to like, the hidden gems in the city. We're gonna go to this restaurant, or we're gonna, whatever.
I kind of hate how the cons are splayed out. Like, you've got PAX Unplugged in Philly. You've got PAX East in Boston. Let's see, what's the other one?
PAX West is in Seattle. Gen Con is in Indianapolis.
Origins is in Ohio.
Big Bad Con is in San Francisco.
Yeah.
It's California. That one's tough. I want to go, but that's tough to get to. Anything on the West Coast, that's a bigger trek. If I go to those conventions, it's going to be to go to the convention and just enjoy the convention, because I can't spend 2 days hauling my crap out there. 2 days hauling my crap back, unless I was going to turn it into like a vacation.
We need love
and do stuff on the way there and back.
We need love in the Midwest and the South. Let's make it happen.
Yeah,
I'm hopping on your wish.
Do I really want to drive my car through the Rocky Mountains with all my crap in the back?
Absolutely not. No, and you definitely don't want to go to an airport with it.
Well, I mean, you can ship it out for stuff like that too, and that's something that I've looked at for as a potential for things. But again, like I said, I'm kind of in that mode where with the big conventions, it's kind of like, well, I'm covering my costs and everything, but if I suddenly had to start shipping a bunch of stuff to and fro, then that's like yet another cost, and I don't know.
Yeah, nah, skip that.
Maybe I will get to the point of doing well enough at some of the bigger conventions where that starts to become a more reasonable proposition, and then I can maybe go to something on the West Coast.
Or we could get more cons where we are. Like, come on, y'all. There's money waiting for you.
But I've also got friends on the West Coast that I'd love to go see. And hey, you all come up. We'll all stay in a hotel or an Airbnb together. I'll buy your badge. You'll do a few hours at the booth. We'll hang around. He'll hang out at the booth while we're there, and then we'll go. And then you've got the rest of the convention for your own time, and we'll get dinner together. And
we got some people in chat that agree. Tales from the Fandom goes, yes, please, need some good big game conventions here, Florida. I'm surprised Florida doesn't have a con. Wow.
Florida's got MegaCon, which is a gigantic fandom convention, which I have considered going to, because just the sheer attendance levels would probably result in enough sales, because there's going to be enough of a percentage of the attendees that are looking for that would find me and are looking for RPGs. But I haven't pulled the trigger on it, but yeah, it's gigantic. It's like 60, 70,000 people or something like that. It's big.
Star Wars Celebration used to be in Orlando for a couple of years.
We almost had it in Chicago, and then our politicians went and fucked it up.
Ugh.
I fucking hate Chicago politics so goddamn bad. We were going to get a Star Wars museum, and Celebration was going to be here, and they fucked it up. Sorry, I'm just never going to let that go. In fact, I might need some time to seethe over it. So what say we take ourselves a quick break to go do all the human things that humans need to do, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes, y'all. How's that sound?
Sounds good. We'll see y'all.
I can do that.
All right, then we'll see you on the second half for the Dark Roast, which is just a...
And we're back. Hello.
All right, we are in the Dark Roast. Ooh. As always, we have established questions. Before we get into that, I had a few more questions about game design and all that good stuff. If we're feeling it.
Sure.
So my question now is, you kind of went from going from a game designer to like your own publisher. How did that jump happen? Or is that kind of the same deal of like when you started doing game design, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna go whole hog? Yeah,
Well,
or were they
yeah,
two different decisions? I guess that's the better question.
it was when I decided to kickstart Murders and Acquisitions, the first game, and produce it as a PDF and also as print on demand books. That effectively made me a publisher. Like,
Oh, okay.
now I'm officially a publisher. And even if you're just doing PDFs, you could argue that you're a publisher. If you're doing enough of the steps, I don't know what, there's some people might break it down in different ways, but I was getting like graphic design and having it go through a full editing pass and proofreading, and then there was artwork, and so I learned how to write art orders for artists, and that's been a process that's been refining over the years. Because that's right up there with giving a writer the right information, right? You want to give the artist enough information to know what they're gonna draw, but not so much that you're kind of deciding a lot of things for them. So that it kind of all started from there, and then the complexity of that became, it took some steps forward here and there. Like when I decided I had a few games under my belt, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this fancy version of Capers and get an offset print run. The version that Noir was showing you, that's the fancy version. The deluxe hardcover, as it were. The printed end pages, it's glossy paper, it's got bookmarks. So then I had to learn what it takes to actually publish, like for an offset print run, because there's some similarities between how you prepare your files for print on demand or PDF and offset print run, but there's some differences. And I asked my printer rep so many questions, and she was very kind and she answered all of them. But it allowed me to learn kind of like how that whole process goes. And so like I didn't have to learn that until the first time I did an offset print run. And now I've done 2 more since and have a 3rd one coming. So I like a lot of the games, a lot of the products that I end up putting out end up being PDF and print on demand. But a few of the like fancier ones, the ones that I feel like, oh, this needs like a nice fancy book. This wants glossy paper, or it has artwork that needs, like, I want to show off more, or that sort of thing. Okay. So yeah, it kind of happened part and parcel to designing my own game. But I also had years of freelancing experience under my belt where like I got the opportunity to take a stab at writing art orders for a few of the things I freelanced for D&D. After I had been doing it for a few years, Chris Perkins, who was my developer at the time, said, "You want to write the art orders? We'll refine them, but you can, like take a stab at writing the art orders for this adventure." And I was like, okay. And so I did that a few times. So it's been a very gradual learning of all sorts of things, and some things I feel I'm pretty good at, and some things I'm serviceable at, and I'm still very much learning.
Oh, so I mean, in the pursuit of this, you've learned how to become an art director, a writer, a publisher. Oh, you just told us that you asked a lot of questions of your printer, and they helped you out with that. What other resources did you use to learn this stuff?
Oh boy, it was kind of all over the place. Sometimes it was literally asking people questions, people who are knowledgeable. Sometimes it was doing researching the information online, finding where people describe how they did this or that. Like the Kickstarter thing was just a lot of research. Art orders I knew the basics of it, and then it's been trial and error ever since, where I'm just kind of refining what I'm providing. Like when I started doing some of my own layout, that became, I use the Affinity suite rather than the Adobe suite of tools. Affinity, I wholeheartedly recommend. I've been able to do everything that I need to do, including doing offset print run preparation for Code Warriors on myself. You pay one time and you own it. And they're doing like a new version every 5 years, but you pay once like $50 for each of the 3, and they run sales all the time. So if you sit around and wait for it, you can get the whole suite of 3 things for like under $100. And then you install it and it's yours. And they are incredible for online tutorials because they were this new tool that was going to do all the things that these Adobe products do, and they're going to be competing with Adobe. They put out amazing tutorials, and they're free.
Okay.
So I learned how to do all sorts of things that I didn't know how to do in like Photoshop type. And InDesign type, but in the Affinity versions, Publisher and Photo. Like I just created some cell sheets for a cell sheet for capers. I had done a cell sheet before, but it was very simple. I wanted to do a fancy schmancy one. And I modeled it after 1920s and 30s magazine ads.
Ooh.
So I had to, I had to learn how to how do I take this illustration and crop it into an oval, but then also fade the edges? And that's something I didn't know how to do. And the Affinity tools were like, you do this, this, and this. And I was like, done. And I learned how, and I had to do it like 6 times before I got it quite the way I wanted it. But it was like, they like taught me how to do it step by step. It was really well done. So like finding that sort of stuff is great. I've been a member of the Indie Game Developer Network for several years. And so that puts me in touch with a bunch of different designers and publishers who have varying degrees of experience in various areas. So we're constantly sharing knowledge there. It's like I've piecemealed this skill set together over the course of like 7 years.
We have a question from chat, actually.
Yeah.
Questions on printing decisions during Kickstarters. Sometimes some games will only offer hardcover runs, and sometimes they'll only do softcover or print on demand. What goes into your decision-making process to make the final decision on what to offer?
Good question.
Okay. There's a decision that gets made for the purposes of the Kickstarter. That gets made, well before the Kickstarter happens, right? So you're kind of working toward that as you're designing everything, because you're shooting for certain page counts. If you're looking to do offset print runs, for example, you're kind of shooting for, ideally, you're shooting for multiples of 8 or 16, depending on the size of the book. There's a whole thing because it's going to be a better per unit price if you have the right page count. But you make the decision. I make the decision kind of up front, and it usually breaks down like this. If it's a zine game or kind of a small scale kind of thing, it'll be PDF and softcover, because like a 32-page game doesn't need a hardcover. Now that's not that to say it wouldn't benefit from having one that really, having a cover that really holds up, but it also it makes for like it makes it easier to have that be like a low price point product. So sometimes you're thinking about like, okay, I've got a bunch of different products. So like, what do I want? I want some things that are like $10. I want some things that are 20. I want some that are 40. Right. So that soft cover stuff ends up like that. Zine stuff ends up small soft cover. The point where I start to, and then anything that's big, I usually have like a soft cover and a hardcover version. If it's up over 100 pages, well over 100 pages. If it's print on demand, I'll have a soft cover and a hardcover. If it's going to be an offset print run, I'll probably just do a hardcover, because that's going to give you a nice sewn binding. Hardcover, it's going to be a book that's going to hold up forever.
Yeah.
And that's what you're going for with that product. Where I struggle is in the like 80 to 120 pages realm. That's where I'm like, for example, What is Light Without Dark is a supplement. It's 80-page supplement. It's not going to get bigger. I opted to have a soft cover because I figured that'll keep it, that'll allow me to keep the price point for it a little lower, reasonably speaking, so that when somebody goes to buy it with the core book online or at a convention, it's a nice little package of like, here's a $40 book, $40 hardcover, $20 soft cover, and I'll knock $5 off because you hit like a $50 threshold, or there'll be a bundle that knocks $5 off or something like that. And so it feels like a nice little package. Whereas if that was a supplement that was a hardcover, it'd probably need to be $30 in order to kind of cover the fact that it costs more to print that. And then there are times when I change my mind later on that sort of thing. And I was like, oh, now I'm going to, it was only a soft cover, but now I'm going to offer a hardcover. Like Die Laughing was originally hardcover or soft cover, you could choose. And when I did a supplement for it and I made the book available, the core book available as part, as one of the tiers, I just did a version with just the hardcover because that gives you the core book hardcover. It's sturdier. It's going to hold up. That's the book you're going to be using more, right? It's going to hold up a little bit better. But I have hardcovers and I sell hardcovers print on demand and I do it with the Kickstarter. But when I take it to conventions, it's a $20 soft cover because $20 is a nice price point.
It is a nice price point.
That's an impulse. That's an impulse buy.
Yeah, at a con, you'll have $20 in your wallet. You can just throw it.
People, if you've got money to spend in the dealer hall at the con, $20 doesn't feel like anything. And it's an easy sell on Sunday. My last $20, ooh, that soft cover of that weird horror game. So there's a bunch of things that kind of go into the decision making on that. And if it's print on demand, you can always change your mind. Yeah. It's easy enough to change your mind. When it becomes offset print run, I tend to go, that's offset print runs are for hardcovers. They're for the bigger books. They're for hardcovers because it's going to be, now this will be something that's going to hold up.
Yeah. And Sunday is usually the day where I spend the most money at cons.
And they're the premium products too. They're going to be the books that are $40 or $50.
That's a good question. If you guys have any more questions, please bring them on. I like that one.
Listeners, viewers, by all means, ask questions about how the sausage is made. I love talking about that stuff. It helps to teach other people who might be looking to make a game, Noir, or maybe some of the viewers, listeners.
So, do we want to do playtesting tonight, Noir?
we may get to that. Yeah.
Playtest.
I'm always so worried because it's just like, is this even really a thing?
Let's just get
Noir,
Barbie, AJ, and
Can I share my advice on taking that step into that first playtest?
Yes, please.
The absolute worst thing that can happen is that it doesn't work in that form. It's the absolute worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work in that form. The best thing that can happen is that, and I'm going to say, I'll do this. The middle thing, the moderate thing that can happen is it works pretty good and you're pretty happy and you can continue working on it. The best thing that can happen is that the people that are playtesting with you say, yeah, there's legs here. There's something to be had here. And when you were talking about defining success earlier, something that was in my head, because I think about this all the time, is there's the successes that are associated with conventions or Kickstarters or overall sales or awards or whatever. But there are also all the little successes, all the little moments that make the process. One of my favorite moments, one of my favorite successes is when a game is far enough along that an artist makes something. I get my first art for the product. It's like now the thing that I've had in my head and that I've written on the page, somebody made it colorful and gave it form and motion. I love getting art.
Yeah. So there is an aspect of this game where, like, in between the initial incident and rising action, there are phases in between where we have little illustrations on cards, and the objective you're gonna pitch what this NPC is. So we just have a little drawing of a character and you define who they are, what their place in the story is, what their name is, that kind of stuff, and how they relate to the phases that came before and the phases that will come after. Like, how do they how were they involved in the initial incident? And for in the document where I was writing the game and the phases and whatnot, I have little prompts like, an NPC that looks like this so that I could give it to the artist. And Anita drew the NPC that I described, and I was just like, oh fuck, this could be a thing. So it's just like, yeah, I feel that. And I think in my head the worst thing that I could imagine is just like somebody being like, wow, you wasted 45 minutes of my time, thanks. Of course, none of my friends would say that, but that's just in my head. The gremlins are just like, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe somebody else could execute this better.
Let's do a playtest. Let's see how it works. We don't need to print anything out fancy. We just need to. We've got the charts. Let's just try it. See if we can get some folks together, and we'll just do a little playtest.
We'll talk.
Doesn't want to commit publicly. Yeah, that's a tough thing to do, is to commit to something publicly. It's like,
it's hard because that makes it real. It is just like and the other thing that's a nightmare in my head is like, you only get one chance for a first impression, and like I've written on other people's works, like I have my names in books, but I've never developed something from zero and gone like, this is a thing that I've made. And so I had a bunch of ideas. Like I've got so many Google Docs of like, this is a game idea that I have, and it's just like, if I do the wrong one first, like, is that it? So that's the nightmare in my head.
here's the thing to keep in mind about the whole idea of you only have one chance to make a first impression. That assumes that you're providing the first impression of the same exact thing every time. You could make this game, playtest it, and the playtesters go like, and you walk away from it, and they're like, maybe not. And then you go back to the drawing board, and you tweak, and you massage it and everything, and you bring it back to those same playtesters, and you playtest it, and they go, okay, that does it now, bam. Those are two different first impressions. Yeah. Because it was two different games.
That's true.
They're thematically the same. You're trying to do some of the same things, but they are two different designs.
And this is completely different from the first idea that you had about this game.
True. It did change mid-flight, because I'm like, as I write this, it's kind of... before, it was going to be like a silly, like, little game show type deal, but then it grew into something a little bit more serious, and I'm like, I like this new direction, but I think part of me was just like, if I couldn't see that this is what it was going to become, do I really know what the fuck I'm doing? And the answer is no.
That's the thing, is nobody knows what they're doing, and nobody knows the shape of what even an artistic project is going to look like before they start making it. Like, you have an idea, you have a rough outline, but what the final product's going to look like, nobody can tell and nobody can know. The point is that you always, until you actually take that first step towards making the project and making it happen, you're never going to know how it's going to shake out. And if you don't do it, it's not going to. That's my soapbox moment.
How dare you?
I watched an episode of a TV show where they hit this morning, literally, where they hit on the trope that you see in TV shows all the time of the new parent that doesn't know what they're doing, and they're down on themselves because they're terrible at this. I am going to be a terrible parent. And then another parent comes in and says, no, you're doing exactly the same thing that every first-time parent does. You're muddling through. You're barely getting along. You're figuring it out. And that's no different from anything that you're going to create or guide to a more complete stage. You are not. You can't. Noir, you are not feeling anything any different from anybody on their first game. You're really not. Different degrees. It might manifest differently for different people, but you're kind of in the same boat as everybody. You're good. You're good.
That's comforting to hear. I've been spoiled by music. Because like when I'm writing a song or something, like I can immediately tell like, oh, this chord goes with that in a really dynamic, interesting way that just tickles my fancy. And this is where all my respect go out to game designers, because there is none of that. I think game design is a little bit closer to stand up in the sense that you really don't know if it works until it's consumed, which is just exciting and terrifying. like with stand up, like if I bomb, which I did a lot, in stand up, like it's just like, all right, these people, I'm probably never gonna see them again. Like,
Right.
you know, they probably had a couple, like an extra couple of bucks and were looking for something to do out on the town tonight. And one of the open mic comedians, me, just happened to suck. And that's just that's the way that goes. But with game design, it's just like, it has to be appealing enough for them to buy in with just a little taste.
I think
And it's, oof.
But I'm going to let you in.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'd say go, Craig.
I'm going to let you in on a secret.
Mm-hmm.
5 years from now, when you've got a few games written and published and they're out there, there's going to be people who are going to look at your product online or a book on a shelf, and they're going to look at that and go, that looks really cool. And they're going to take it home and they're going to read it and they're going to go, no. And then there's another person who's going to get that same product. They're going to look at it and say, oh, that looks really cool. And they're going to take it home and they're going to say, where has this been all my life? I have been waiting for this game. And that is going to happen for everything you design. And it happens that way for every single designer.
You got to think about it less like a stand-up comedy show and more like a writer's room. There's no wrong ideas, and everything gets thrown into the pot, and then what comes out at the end is a polished, finished product. The point is that it's collaborative.
True. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm feeling a little bit more reinvigorated.
We're gonna amp you up on this.
I'm happy to spend the rest of the show just lifting Noir up. I'm down.
Like I'm glad that this is airing because like I don't think that game designers get the credit that they deserve because this shit is not easy, yo. Even if because I believe in this idea and I believe in this game and I built this game because I'm tired of hearing folks go, I don't know if I can GM, like I'm no Matt Mercer, I'm no Brindley Mulligan, I'm no Abria. And I'm like, you don't have to be them to run a game. And I was just like, how could I build a game to illustrate that? And that was the guiding light of what all this is. And shit is hard because like I'm now feeling the same fear that I'm trying to quell with other people. Like maybe I'm not good. I'm no game designer, but here we are.
Do it. Also, if you need to be hyped up, I can also message Caitlin and get her to hype you up further.
No.
I'm doing it.
But back to our questions for our guest here. I'm gonna try and shut the attention off of me for a second. Because this is the Dark Roast, I kind of want to ask, like, what has been some of the harder points in your journey as a game designer and as a publisher? What have been some points where you're just like, oh man, like you had to dig deep to keep going?
Oh boy. I think when Mergers and Acquisitions funded on Kickstarter, it basically did well enough to get made.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I was working on Capers, but I was still a fair ways away from having it ready. And I decided, okay, I'm going to really try to do this. Like, I'm going to try to make another game, and I'm going to try to, that's when I started looking at, joining the Indie Game Developer Network, and can I take these things to conventions? Because now I've got more than one product. I had, Capers and Die Laughing were both in kind of early versions, and I had ashcan versions, short versions to just take and sell. I could show to people. I could run games at conventions. I could sell them a copy, a soft cover for $5 or $10. And Mergers and Acquisitions, online sales, drive-through RPG, before I actually got it into conventions, never really sold terribly well because it's a weird niche game. And to be honest, all my games are weird niche games, but Murders and Acquisitions is very much a weird niche game because it's all about beating people up in an office. That's what the game is about. And as much as people can, who work in offices or who have seen TV shows and movies about characters that work in offices can relate to that, it's still kind of a hard sell for a game. So like there was a point coming where I was finishing up Capers and I was like, and I'm doing a thing with playing cards. Really, Craig? Why didn't I just stick with dice? People aren't going to want to play with playing cards. And this is a weird niche game too. It's a supers game. That's great. People like supers, but it's specifically set in the 1920s and it's about gangsters who have superpowers. And I got very in my head with Murders and Acquisitions not doing terribly well. And it's like, I'm doing niche game number 2. And it's got what I thought, I didn't think it was necessarily working against it, but I was worried that it would work against it, which was the playing card game mechanic. I thought this is either going to be something that people look at and go, oh my God, this is really cool. I love this. Or it's going to be something that everybody looks at and goes, where's my dice? I don't want playing cards. I want to roll clicky clacks. I got inside my head really hard on that.
Cards is really nice too. It hits that.
There's something to be said. And I learned during playtesting, I went through a period where I was doubting. I was worried about how to deal with like the idea of looking through your discard pile, or keeping track of stuff. Like keeping track of how many of different types of cards, card counting, basically keeping track of what your deck composition still is. And I was like, there's some people that are going to be very good at that. And there's some people that aren't going to be terribly good at that. And that might make people who aren't good at keeping track of that sort of thing feel like this game is hamstringing me because I can't do the thing that some other people are doing, right. or I'm not very good at it. And I got like, ugh. And I was like, does that give people an unfair advantage who can keep track of that stuff? Because you change your decisions based on whether you've got a lot of face cards left. Like people decide to take more risks if they know they have a higher chance of success, right? And when I got into playtesting after the first game, like real playtesting, when I had like real playtesting going on, where we really did like several adventures, the players told me that is absolutely the playing cards and the deck composition changing. And I was at the rules at the time was that you can look through your discard pile. They said that is a feature of this game. That is not a bug in any way, because even if you couldn't look through your discard pile, other people at the table are going to treat playing this game like craps. Because players in Capers are typically expected that you are a group all working toward the same goal. And when you were standing around a craps table, most people are betting with the shooter. You can bet against the shooter, but most of the people are there betting with the shooter. So when you see craps tables getting really rowdy and everything, it's because the shooter's doing well and everybody's winning.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens with Capers. They said, even for the people, a person gets to their turn and they're like, I don't know, I want to try this thing. And somebody else at the table goes, do it. You got a ton of face cards. You haven't hardly seen any face cards. I haven't seen an ace from you and ever do it. Because they want you to win, and everybody wins when you flip the good card, just like everybody wins when you roll the 20.
Yeah.
But in a dice rolling game, you don't have the chance to say, well, that die is going to come up a 20. You have a better chance of rolling a 20 because you don't. It's a 1 in 20.
Yeah.
But with a playing card deck, you've got a better chance of that being an ace if you've flipped a bunch of cards and no aces have come up yet. So you can actually think to that. So I don't remember where we started, but that's where I went.
No, we were talking about but I like.
But yeah, it took that
low point.
Yeah, it took kind of seeing that happen where I was like, oh, that becomes a selling point. That's something that I can talk to people about and be like, look at what you can do with playing cards that you can't do with dice.
It's a buy-in.
Yep.
Fun.
And so sometimes you get hung up on something that you think maybe like I love this, but is everybody else going to love this? And it's happened a couple of times. you either get people telling you, no, this is good. You stop beating yourself up over this, or they tell you definitively that thing you loved, not so good. Um,
Or
maybe reconsider that.
or it's more constructive where it's like that thing that you were sold on, we can probably retool this, we can work with this, and we can make it a little bit better, or a little bit so that it works with the rest of the mechanics a little bit less clunkier.
Yep.
Okay, now that's very exciting to hear, because I'm currently in that spiral that you were talking about before with a few mechanics that, yeah, no, so I love hearing that. It almost sounds like, and please, I'd love your insight on this stuff. It almost sounds like the spiral is part of it, like
Kinda. It can be.
God damn it.
Like it can come in a lot of different, like the game design process can happen a lot of different ways, and sometimes the spiral is part of it. Sometimes you get to a point where you're like, and I've had it happen where, like, just without getting into the details of each of the stories, but basically, Die Laughing took about 6 iterations over the course of several years to come to be what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Code Warriors was designed in a completely different system, and I decided that's just not working, and I put it on the shelf for 2 years, and then came back to it with a different system, and suddenly it sung, and it worked in that system. There's Good Strong Hands poured out of me. Good Strong Hands, and it's maybe one of the reasons I consider it to, I tell people all the time, like, I love all my RPG babies equally, but I kind of love Good Strong Hands the most.
I don't care much for Job.
For a number of reasons. But perhaps one of the reasons anyway is that it poured out of me so easily. Like, okay. I came up with this idea for this game system. It all fell into place. It was based on these movies that I loved, so I was just inspiring myself from all these. It gave me an excuse to go back and watch those movies again and just like create things that kind of make me think about that stuff. When the playtesting happened, it was massaging. The mechanics are interesting and fun, but they're not overly complex. So it was really just kind of massaging some things to get the mechanics to do what I wanted them to do, and tweak a little bit of how the game plays. And then I can struggle with writing adventures for other people, like actual full, like multi-page adventures. But with Good Strong Hands, I chose, and I've done this now with a few other games too, where I did like 2-page story, what I call them story schemes, but adventure outlines. It's like, here's 2 pages, here's a setup, here's like, this gets you, here's what's happening in the background, here's the setup to get you going, here's some characters, here's some interesting locations, here's a bunch of challenges that you can put out in front of people, here's a couple of those challenges expanded more, and here's an epilogue. And it gives you like all the bones of a story. So and when I started writing those poured out of me. And then even with the game I did, there were 3 backers did a special tier where they helped me write a trilogy of those. So we did like an 8-page thing with each one, where it was 2 pages of kind of setup and kind of developing all the connective tissue, and then it was a trilogy. Here you have a trilogy of stories that tells this one adventure, but it was done as 3 2-page adventure outlines that I worked out all the basics of with the backers, and then I solidified it myself, and then gave them approval, and we talked about it, and that those collaborations were great.
Hell yeah! So if you now could go to yourself at the beginning of your game development journey and give yourself some advice, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, every piece of advice that I've thrown out there at you today are good ones. But like the broader, single, what's the single most important piece of advice? Maybe the one that pops to mind is, and it took me a while to realize it, but now I fully realize it, and I tell aspiring designers this all the time, is that your game idea, even if it's similar or draws upon inspirations of other games, like the thing that you have in your head, the thing that you want to design, there is somebody out there, and probably many somebodies, who are just waiting for that game. They want that game so badly. They just don't know it yet.
That is a powerful thought. That is a freaking powerful thought. I'm going to hold on to that.
We do have one more question from chat. Questions about players printing their own stuff. A lot of books will have disclaimers about go ahead and print what you need. How do you feel about consumers printing out a purchased PDF at a print shop or using a service like Lulu?
Once I sell you the PDF, that is your game. You're going to change the rules. You're going to mark in the book. You're going to delete whole parts of it. And I have no way to monitor that. Print it. I don't care. It's going to cost you money. You could have paid for it.
You could have paid for the hard copy.
Could have paid for the soft cover or the hard cover. You're going to pay money to get it printed unless you have like an in where you like work someplace or know somebody. And if you do,
used to work in a print shop. Haha.
Nothing I can do about it. I can't. What am I going to do about it?
Hell yeah. All right, so we have some set questions for the Dark Roast, and I think it's time that we start asking a few of them. We like to begin with something that we call Petty Prime Time.
We call what?
Petty Prime Time. This is where if you feel like subtweeting IRL, this is where you get the chance to do it. Now, I like to model the behavior that I expect, so this is purely optional, but here's how it goes. Here's my Petty Prime Time. If you have complaints about the way a company does something, the least effective thing that you can do is to attack people that have no means of making changes in that area. So it doesn't make sense for fans of, like, I don't know, let's say WotC, to attack other fans of WotC because of something WotC did. Now, if you have a problem with the company, there are ways to deal with it. Historically, boycotts, that sort of deal, letter campaigns, but trolling other players on social media or just outright trying to make them feel bad, not the smartest move, and it makes you a dick, so don't do that. And that is my Petty Prime Time.
Oh boy, you expanded as you discussed it, and in my head I was coming up with something that sounds very much like that.
Feel free to share it still.
Which is more broadly applicable, but like if you come upon a Facebook post or a tweet with responses or a forum discussion or whatever, and it is very clear in the first few in the OP and then in the first few responses that this is a love fest, that this is people talking about the thing they dig, don't crap on it.
Yeah.
You want to crap on it? You want to crap on a thing? Write your own damn post. Go over there and crap on it. Don't come in here and crap all over my love fest.
It just makes you an asshole. Don't be an asshole.
If the OP asks for criticism, okay. Don't be a dick about it, but fine. The OP is saying, like, you know, I feel like this is nearly a perfect movie. Like, where does it fall short? And you're going to have a discussion about the little things where it falls short. That's okay. That's like, that's being requested. But if somebody's in there having a Star Wars love fest, I don't give two craps about how you hate The Last Jedi. I really don't. And nobody on that thread probably does.
But I have to make my presence felt in my opinions. No, you don't. No, you don't.
Yeah, you can. You feel you have to? Over there. Set up your own crap thread.
We'll have our love fest. You can have your shit fest.
Don't pee in my Cheerios, man.
Oh, I feel that. Anita, you got anything?
Oh, yeah, I got something. Hey, if you come into, I don't know, a TTRPG live stream and you decide that you try to troll in chat, I'm gonna turn it around on you. I don't care. I'm gonna be specific. Last night during our Star Trek, the other night during the Star Trek game that I was in, someone came into chat and was like, "This is nerd shit," and I was like, "No, nerd shit is the best shit. Get wrecked, nerd. You're the one coming into people's chats and trying to get a reaction. You're not gonna get it from me." I love playing TTRPGs. Fuck you.
So I have to confess, I was a little worried at this petty prime time because Anita runs a Star Trek game, and one of the channel rewards is you get to name an NPC.
Oh no, I don't give a fuck about that.
And I just like to come in every now and then and be like, Commander Butts. So I thought this was at me for a second.
Oh no, you're good. I don't care about that. I will write Commander Butts to the storyline. Listen, that's how Taru got a mission briefing from Commander Butts.
Poor guy had to go through Starfleet with that name. The second established segment that we have here, something that we like to call the TTRPG confessional. If you've got a habit at the table that you feel is a little less than awesome, this is where you confess. Again, I will go first, just a model. Okay. So, one of my confessions, my confession for this week is that I've noticed that I have a tendency, like I'll have an idea for what I want my character to do, and I have a hard time breaking through conversations to do my character's thing. And by the time there's a lull in the conversation, the moment has passed. I need to be a little bit more assertive with character choices at the table. So that being said, the second part of TTRPG confessionals is the penance. So Anita, what is my penance? What do I have to do?
Your penance is we actually wrote out a whole bunch of safety tools for this. If you want your character to take charge of the scene, I'm gonna recommend that you use the scene star safety tool, where it's like, hey, I'd like to take the reins a little bit. GM, please put the spotlight on me.
All right, so the issue with that is that I'm not running the game, so I didn't set the safety tools.
I would during Stars and Wishes, I would make my voice known that, hey, this is something that I would like to implement in the game. If it's cool with y'all, we'd rock with it. And also, if there was a way for me to indicate that I would like the attention on me, please, let's work with that.
Okay. Hey, Craig, do you have a penance for me?
Oh.
It's a purely optional.
No, I'm not going to go judging anybody on this. No. Anita's got it covered. Those are good suggestions about ways to kind of even-handedly kind of bring it to the group. Because talk to your players, talk to the group, talk to the players. That solves a lot of issues in a game. Just talk to the people.
I like it.
A crew.
I see you using your Star Trek focuses IRL.
This is well, I mean that's from Our Flag Means Death, but
True. All right. Well, would anyone else like to confess? Confess your sins.
I work in an environment where I receive direction from a supervisor, and I've run into this plenty of times with various supervisors over the years who don't give enough information for you to make heads or tails of what they're actually wanting.
Yes.
So to compensate for that, I tend to over-explain things. So that's maybe my faux pas at the table, especially when I'm GMing, is because I tend to over-describe, over-explain, because I want to make sure, like, I want it to be everything that I'm describing in the scene, because I so rarely do anything with battle maps, right? It's like, it's all, we got to imagine it. So I'm like really explaining, and I'm getting into minutia that maybe I'm pushing it too far, and I just keep babbling. Yeah, that's... I'm aware that I do it, and I try to curtail it, but I know I do it.
I have a penance already.
Nita's good at the penance. What do you got?
When you feel like you are getting into over-explanation territory, ask one of your players what they see. Let them help fill in the scene.
Ooh.
That is an excellent point. It's something that I like doing in general anyway.
Yeah.
Is encouraging players to help set the stage and help build the world, and sidestepping into that. That's not so much penance as it is just good advice.
Yeah, that's usually what this is.
Yeah, we just keep it thematic. All right, no, I'm gonna hop on that one. Yeah, that's a good penance. Okay, why did you come over here?
I want attention, but I don't want you to give it to me.
I know, I'll never understand cats. All right, and we've got 2 more segments here. This is the one that we prepped you for. If you've been in the TTRPG space long enough, you've probably had the displeasure of playing with that guy. That guy is a veritable black hole of fun at the table. Someone that if they were yeeted into the sun, your enjoyment at the table would increase tenfold. So, Craig, have you played with that guy?
Hell yes. This is one of my favorite stories from convention going from many years ago.
The conventions are always the best ones.
This was at Winter Fantasy, when Gen Con was still in
Geneva.
Gen Con was still in Milwaukee.
Yeah,
I was living in Milwaukee. We went to Winter Fantasy. It was right before. It was like this was the Winter Fantasy where there was one third edition preview that you could play, but it was otherwise second edition. And I was in this second edition game, D&D game, and this is when the RPGA was still kind of running D&D convention adventures and stuff, and they had what was called the D&D Open that would happen at Gen Con. It was like the championship of role playing. And you could win a spot in the D&D Open by winning, and basically winning meant getting voted by everybody else at the table as the best role player for that particular event. And I was in an event with one of the players who was a spotlight hog in the biggest way. It was pre-gen characters, but they found, like, they injected personality traits that would be as quirky and weird and out there so that they had a reason to just really overdo it at the table. And they were that guy and robbed, just took the focus on themselves all the time and didn't give it out to any. At no point did they give focus to anybody. Because as we've talked about, and Noir commented, improvisers are great because improvisers know that it's just as much about listening and throwing focus as it is about taking some focus occasionally for yourself. Yeah. And it became very clear very quickly that that's what they were going for. So I got a hook or two on my character and started basically subtly doing everything I could to make sure that we drew away from that person's spotlight and throw it to other people, and doing it in character, throwing things to other people as much as possible to make sure that the players who were a little hesitant to kind of rub up against, wrong against the dominant personality at the table, the big personality, didn't have to do it because I was going to give that to them. And and kind of worked in conjunction with the GM because the GM recognized it too. We talked about it after the game. And so, we successfully did it to the point that, the point of this is not that I got voted as the best role player at the table and got to be in the D&D Open and Gen Con, although that's nice.
Yeah.
The point of it is that guy didn't. That guy didn't go in there and fuck up the experience for the other people who were in the D&D Open.
Yeah. Oh, I hate spotlight hogs. I can always tell when I'm gonna enjoy playing with somebody when they're like, did I talk too much? Was it too much on me? No, do your thing. But there are some people that don't have that inclination to go, oh, there are other people at the table and their fun matters too.
Yeah, we were like a half an hour in and the guy just wouldn't stop in a 4-hour session. And I was like, all right, time to make sure. I became con dad. I was like in my late 20s, and I'm suddenly con dad to make sure everybody has a good time.
No, we need more of that though, because there are quite a few scene stealers, or like not scene stealers. That sounds like a compliment. There are camera hogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The cleric goes off for a moment to pray with their god in quiet solitude to figure out what they do next, and I'm there. Like, come on, dude. And I am also talking to their god. Really? Like, really?
Well, that god smites you.
I rolled to punch their god. Like, I've seen players get to that extent, and it's wild. Yeah, that guy sucks. I hope he does better. I hope. Like, there's really two outcomes to that kind of story. One, the guy goes, "This is bullshit," and thinks they killed it and that you were an asshole forever. Or they go, "Oh, maybe the problem is me," and then they fix it. So I'm hoping it's the latter for that dude.
Hey.
I don't expect it to be, but I hope so.
As we talked about, people change. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping.
My recollection is that he was very young too. He was like my age or younger. Like he was, 20s. Like it.
It happens.
Yeah. People change. People do change.
That is true, and we hope that they do, because we need more awesome people, because we have a surplus of dickheads in the world. Just
so many people with those Sims lights on.
It's flickered above my head a few times. That's gonna. I just want you to know that's gonna be in our lexicon forever. the
Sims light.
That is now just a part of our conversations.
Yeah, the jackass light is flickering. Which color?
Just be like, "Hey, your light's flickering." Oh shit, my bad. I can't wait for the first time Anita drops that bomb on me. I know it's gonna happen.
Hey, the light.
I owe several people an apology. And this is the last segment that we have for the Dark Roast, and this is we like to end on a positive note, because the Dark Roast, we do talk about some darker topics, like the low points of your career here and things that you've learned from it, and of course the That Guy segment. We like to end on what we call the community spotlight. So if there's anyone that you feel in the space needs to get some love, you want to give the platform to shine a light on some folks that have helped you along the way, or just people that you admire, this is your chance to do that. This doesn't need modeling. It's pretty straightforward. So if you got some names, feel free to drop them.
Crap. Let me make sure I want to double check. Okay. A couple of people who, literally a couple as well, who have done some lovely things in role-playing games and have tried some really interesting different types of, designed some really different types of games. And because of life stuff and job stuff and being in some cases involvement with other role-playing game companies, don't often get to do as much of their own thing. Is Camden Wright and Kate Bullock, who
Kate. We love one whole Kate.
I served with both of them as officers, as board members of the Indie Game Developer Network for a year. Camden designed One Child's Heart, which is a game about helping a child who is experiencing difficulties, and is a very empathetic and healing sort of game. Kate loves to do games that make you think, and has also done a collection of, which is just, oh god, it tickles me pink, because I read some of the ones when she was posting them as she was developing. She published a book called Voracious, which is a series of erotic tales of getting it on with monster fucking from mythology, and manages to imbue the erotica and the scene of what's happening with like what the monster is about and what their history and or their mythology, what their background is and what their capabilities are and like all the things, just like all the different aspects of what the monster is. It's if you're interested in some really gripping, some cases very literally gripping, because there are monsters with tentacles. Erotica kind of stuff. That's a lot of fun, really stuff. They co-own Unicorn Motorcycle Games. I'm not sure off the top of my head how many titles are technically published under that, but there are at least a few. Kate also works for Magpie Games as like community director, something like that. She manages their Kickstarters. And has had a significant voice in and involvement in running a number of different communities, including Breakout Con. I believe she's been involved in quite a bit up in Canada. Check out Camden Wright and Kate Bullock's stuff in all its forms. They've been involved in RPGs in a number of different ways.
Yeah, voracious is what I like to call informed horny. So if you like some educational history on monsters with a wonderful splashing of horny, definitely check out Kate Bullock. Just incredible stuff. I worked with Kate when I was part of the Magpie GMing program, and I watched Kate deal with the Avatar Legends launch.
Ooh.
It was not easy, and they handled it with such grace, poise, and humility. I couldn't have done it. I would have been yelling at folks. So shout out to Kate. That's awesome. And I think that brings us successfully to the end of our show for today. So thank you so much for joining us, Craig. I've been one of your hosts, Noir. You can find me, just look at my Twitter or my website, TheNoirEnigma.com, to see what I'm up to next. And I'll pass it on over to the leader of this whole thing. Anita, tell us what's up.
Hello, everybody. I am Anita, otherwise known as Benita or Critical Misses. You can find me everywhere online, one of those places. You can usually find me playing way too much Star Trek Adventures here on Fridays, and then also on Tuesdays over on Modifius's channel. That's a thing. And also Sundays on Pluto Cleric's channel for a Starfinder game, because I can't keep playing Star Trek Adventures. I have to play something different sometimes. You can also do the thing, follow me on the things. That's it. That's all. That's me. And Craig, tell everybody who you are, where you can be found, and what you're working on.
Oh boy. I'm Craig Campbell. I'm the owner of NerdBurger Games. I'm at NerdBurgerCraig on Twitter and DiceCamp at Mastodon. The website is nerdburgergames.com. You can find everything at DriveThruRPG. I'm going to be at a bunch of conventions this year. The plans are for Fanboy Expo in Knoxville in a couple of months. NerdBurger Games will have its own booth at Gen Con this year, everybody. Come see us in the way back of the hall in Entrepreneur Avenue. But you have to crawl before you can walk, and you have to walk before you can run. So I got to start back there. But very excited about that. Looking forward to that. And then I'll definitely be going to, well, the plan is to go to PAX Unplugged as well. We had a booth there last year. And there's a potential for a couple of others that I'm waiting to hear if I'm going to get into. And then there's like some of my games end up in the Indie Game Developer Network booth at other things too, like Origins. You'll be able to find some of the games there. Look for the IGDN booth with the big yellow banner. That's it.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for checking us out. Hope you learned a lot. I will be scheduling a playtest. Thank you guys for all the inspiration there. Kick my mind goblin's ass to get me moving.
Do it.
But with that, I believe we've got a tagline to say, and then we'll go ahead and let's raid our friend the Lovely.
Let's go say hi to Sam the Lev. Well, that's been our show, everybody. Thank you all again so much for joining us. And Craig, thank you for stopping by and hanging out with us this morning. But
Thank you.
until next time, everybody, the ritual has concluded.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.